We need to have a very serious conversation right now. A real one, not the comfortable, carefully packaged version that gets served to audiences who are not paying close enough attention to push back on what they are being told. Because a claim has been put into public circulation that is so historically reckless, so divorced from the actual documentary record of professional basketball, that allowing it to sit unchallenged would be a genuine disservice to anyone who cares about getting this right. The claim is this: Kobe Bean Bryant was never, not one single time in his entire career, the best player in the world. That is the position being advanced with a straight face by someone collecting a paycheck from a sports management company that represents LeBron James. Let that context settle in your mind before we go a single step further. Because the source of an argument matters when evaluating its credibility, and this particular argument has a financial architecture underneath it that explains everything about why it is being made and absolutely nothing about whether it is true. It is not true. And we are going to demonstrate that with specificity, with statistics, with historical record, and with the testimony of people who were actually on the floor competing against these players during their primes, not people with management contracts to protect, people who played the game at the highest level and watched these players with their own eyes from the closest possible vantage point. Let us start in 2003 because that year alone dismantles the central argument before it ever gains real traction. In the 2002 to 2003 NBA season, Kobe Bryant played in all 82 regular season games. All of them. Meanwhile, Shaquille O'Neal, his teammate and the reigning Finals MVP, appeared in only 66. The Lakers still won 50 games that year. Think about the weight of that detail. The team's dominant center missed 16 games, and the franchise stayed at 50 wins because of what Kobe Bryant was doing on the floor every single night. He finished third in MVP voting that season. Shaq finished fifth. Kobe averaged 30 points per game, making him one of only two players in the entire league to reach that threshold that year, the other being Tracy McGrady. But here is what separates Kobe's 30 points from a pure scoring achievement. He also contributed 7 rebounds and 6 assists per game while finishing 8th in Defensive Player of the Year voting and earning First-Team All-NBA and First-Team All-NBA defensive honors simultaneously. That is not a one-dimensional scorer padding statistics on a bad team. That is the complete package operating at the highest available level. The honest assessment is that Kobe Bryant in 2003 was the best player in the NBA. Not because Tim Duncan did not win the MVP that year, because he did, and it was a defensible selection given Duncan's excellence and his team's record, but MVP voting and the actual identity of the best player on the planet are not always the same conversation, and the people arguing they are always identical are the same people who insist playoff results are the only legitimate measure of individual excellence. Which brings us directly to the most glaring hypocrisy embedded in the entire argument being advanced here. The logic being deployed goes something like this. If a player lost early in the playoffs in a given season, he cannot be considered the best player in the world that season. Apply that standard honestly and watch it collapse immediately under its own weight. Nikola Jokic won the league MVP in the 2021 to 2022 season, his second consecutive MVP award. His Denver Nuggets were eliminated in the first round of the playoffs that year. By the exact reasoning being used to disqualify Kobe Bryant, Jokic cannot be considered the best player in the world that season either. And yet nobody advancing this argument against Kobe is volunteering to strip that designation from Jokic. Furthermore, LeBron James won the league MVP in 2009. His Cleveland Cavaliers were eliminated in the second round of the playoffs that year, and he personally blew a 2-1 series lead in that exit.
Once Kobe got great, call it 99. He wasn't great yet, but I'll give him 90. Once you started seeing flashes. From 99 until 2002, Shaquille O'Neal was the best player in the world. And then from 2003 until 2007, Tim Duncan was the best player in the world. You know how I know Tim Duncan was the best player in the world at that time? Because he won 3 championships in 5 years. He won 2 MVPs. He was the best player. He was the best player until that 48 special by LeBron in 2007. LeBron was the best player in the world from that moment until 2018.
By the identical standard being selectively applied to Kobe Bryant, LeBron cannot be the best player in the world in 2009. And yet, the person making this argument about Kobe absolutely believes LeBron was the best player that season. The inconsistency is not subtle, it is foundational. It exposes the entire framework as a conclusion dressed up as an argument rather than an argument that honestly leads to a conclusion. Now let us talk about 2005 to 2006, because if there was any remaining resistance to acknowledging Kobe as the best player on the planet, this season should have ended it permanently and completely. Kobe Bryant led the NBA in scoring that year with 35 points per game. 35 in an era when the average NBA team scored just 96 points per game across an entire 48 minutes of basketball. To put the historical dimension of that achievement in precise context, his 2005 to 2006 scoring output represents the 7th highest single-season points total in the recorded history of professional basketball. The only seasons ahead of it belong to Wilt Chamberlain across 4 seasons in the 1960s and Michael Jordan across 2 seasons in the 1980s. Not one season from Jordan's celebrated 1990s championship run produced more points or a higher scoring average than Kobe Bryant in 2005 to 2006. Not one.
At the same time, I'm going with all the things that Kobe, when we talk about that number 1 and 2, yes, Kobe is very much like Michael Jordan as far as how he played the game, the way he attacked. LeBron was more, I think he's one of the greatest individuals, especially with his vision and making others better. But I just have Kobe above LeBron in that aspect of things. He should be number 2. And Bill Russell, we know, Magic, we know. And then that Tim Duncan.
And he accomplished this in what was widely recognized as the most defensively constrained offensive environment of the modern NBA era, the dead ball period before rule changes opened the game back up. While doing all of that, he earned first-team All-NBA defensive honors as well. The best scorer in the league and one of the best perimeter defenders in the league simultaneously in the same season. But the rebuttal arrives predictably. He lost in the first round that year. The Lakers were eliminated early. Therefore, he cannot be the best player in the world. We have already demonstrated the selective and inconsistent application of that standard. Jokic lost in the first round as a 2-time MVP. LeBron lost in the second round as an MVP and blew a series lead doing it. The standard evaporates the moment you apply it universally instead of selectively. And when you strip away the selectively applied playoff exit disqualifier, what you are left with is a player who scored the 7th most points in professional basketball history while playing elite perimeter defense. That is the best player in the world. Full stop. Now, here is the part of the argument that is most conspicuously avoided when this conversation gets managed by people with financial interests in a particular outcome. The years 2008 through 2010, 3 consecutive seasons, let us examine them carefully because they represent perhaps the strongest possible case for Kobe Bryant as the best player on the planet during that specific window. In each of those 3 seasons, Kobe Bryant led the Los Angeles Lakers to the number 1 seed in the Western Conference, the conference where during this precise period, the 8th seed was winning 50 games. The depth of competition in the West during those years was extraordinary, and the Lakers were the top seed in all 3 seasons. In one of those seasons, 2007 to 2008, Kobe won the league MVP award. Across all 3 seasons, he reached the NBA Finals. He won back-to-back championships in 2009 and 2010. He earned Finals MVP recognition in both of those championship runs. And he accomplished those back-to-back titles without a single teammate who has been recognized as a top 75 player of all time. He is the only player in NBA history to win consecutive championships without a top 75 player alongside him. That is a distinction that belongs to nobody else, not to the players being placed above him in these manufactured rankings. Nobody else. And then there is this number, which should end the conversation about his peak performance in those 3 playoff runs entirely. In each of the 2008, 2009, and 2010 postseasons, Kobe Bryant led the entire NBA playoffs in scoring. All 3 years, he scored at least 600 points in all 3 of those playoff runs, 600 points in a single postseason, 3 consecutive times. No other player in recorded NBA history has accomplished that feat. Not LeBron James, not Michael Jordan, not Shaquille O'Neal, not Tim Duncan, only Kobe Bryant. And he was first-team All-NBA defensive in all 3 of those seasons as well, meaning he was the best offensive player in the playoffs and one of the best defensive players at his position in the regular season simultaneously during all 3 years. You do not think that combination in the most difficult conference in the sport with back-to-back finals MVP trophies attached to it warrants the best player in the world designation in any of those 3 seasons? That position requires a motivated reasoning so powerful it overrides the actual evidence. Now let us pull back and examine the full panoramic view of Kobe Bryant's peak, because the individual seasons are compelling enough, but the sustained excellence across an entire decade is what truly defines a player's claim to all-time greatness. Take the decade of the 2000s, specifically the 10 calendar years spanning 2000 through 2010. Kobe Bryant led that entire decade in total points scored and in points per game average. That decade included Allen Iverson, who was one of the most prolific individual scorers the sport had ever seen. It included Shaquille O'Neal at his physical peak. It included Dwyane Wade in his prime. It included a young LeBron James who was already being discussed as a generational talent. It included Kevin Durant beginning to emerge as one of the sport's great offensive forces. And across all 10 years competing against all of those elite players, Kobe Bryant scored more points total and more points per game than every single one of them. That is dominance across an extended period, not a single outlier season. Extend the frame slightly further and the case becomes even more overwhelming. From 1999, when Kobe truly began his ascent to elite status, through 2013, when a ruptured Achilles tendon interrupted his career at its still productive stage, that 14-year span produced 11 first-team All-NBA selections for Kobe Bryant. 11. The only player in NBA history with more first-team All-NBA selections in any comparable 14-year window is LeBron James, who accumulated 13. And during that same 14-year span, Kobe earned 9 first-team All-NBA defensive team selections. 9. That number places him in a 4-way tie for the most first-team All-Defensive selections in NBA history, tied with Michael Jordan, Kevin Garnett, and Gary Payton, the most ever, tied with the greatest perimeter defender the sport has arguably produced. So here is the complete picture we are being asked to disbelieve. 14 years of sustained elite performance, 11 first-team All-NBA selections, 9 first-team All-Defensive selections, tied for the most in league history, 7 NBA Finals appearances, 5 championships, back-to-back titles without a top 75 player, 3 consecutive playoff scoring titles with 600-plus points each time, a feat no other player has accomplished in the history of the sport, the 7th highest single-season scoring total ever recorded, a league MVP, back-to-back finals MVPs, and we are being told by someone with a contractual relationship to a competing players' management company that this man was never, not once, the best player in the world. That conclusion requires you to ignore virtually every quantifiable measure of individual basketball excellence simultaneously. Now, here is where the conversation about credibility and motivation becomes impossible to avoid. Because back in 2012, before the financial arrangements that currently shape certain media opinions were in place, the very person advancing this argument about Kobe publicly stated on social media that Kobe Bryant was the second best player he had ever seen in his lifetime, second only to Michael Jordan, above Tim Duncan, above Hakeem Olajuwon, above Shaquille O'Neal, and above LeBron James, who landed 7th on that list at the time. That was the honest evaluation offered when there was no financial incentive pointing in a different direction. That was the assessment before the clutch sports money entered the equation. And now, somehow, several of those players ranked below Kobe in 2012 have mysteriously leapfrogged him in the revised rankings of 2026. The revision happened not because new evidence emerged about those players' careers. Their careers are finished and fully documented. The revision happened because the financial incentive structure changed. That is the only variable that changed, and when the only thing that changes between two contradictory evaluations of the same fixed historical record is the financial interest of the evaluator, you do not have an evolving analytical perspective. You have a paid position masquerading as one, and if you want testimony from someone without a financial stake in the outcome, someone who was actually on the floor competing against these players at the highest level during the years in question, consider the perspective of Bruce Bowen. This is a man who played elite perimeter defense at the professional level for years. He competed against LeBron James in an NBA Finals. He played alongside Tim Duncan during multiple championship runs, meaning he observed Duncan from the closest possible vantage point across a huge portion of Duncan's prime, and he faced Kobe Bryant in multiple high-leverage postseason series as well as extensive regular season competition. Bruce Bowen has Kobe Bryant as the second greatest player he has ever seen, behind only Michael Jordan. LeBron James does not appear in his top 5. Tim Duncan falls behind Kobe in his evaluation. This is not an isolated perspective. This is broadly representative of how players who actually competed against both Kobe Bryant and LeBron James during their respective primes evaluate the comparison when asked directly and honestly. The list of former players, coaches, and genuine basketball insiders who place Kobe above LeBron is extensive and distinguished. People who overlapped both careers, people who shared locker rooms and defended both players and competed against both players in meaningful games with real stakes. By and large, the consensus from the people who actually lived inside this era of basketball places Kobe Bryant above LeBron James. That consensus does not emerge from financial calculation. It emerges from first-hand competitive experience. The argument that Kobe Bryant was never the best player in the world is not a defensible analytical position when examined against the actual record. It is a conclusion that requires selective application of standards that are abandoned the moment they produce inconvenient results for other players. It requires ignoring the scoring records, ignoring the defensive recognition, ignoring the back-to-back titles won without elite co-stars, ignoring the 3 consecutive playoff scoring titles that no other player in history has matched, ignoring the 14 years of combined offensive and defensive excellence that placed him alongside Jordan as the most decorated perimeter defender ever. And it requires ignoring what the person making the argument actually believed before the financial incentive to believe something different arrived. The historical record of Kobe Bean Bryant is written. It is fixed. It belongs to him permanently and completely, regardless of how many revision sessions get staged by people cashing checks from his competitors' representatives. 7 finals, 5 rings, back-to-back titles without a top 75 player, the 7th highest scoring season in professional basketball history, 600 points in 3 consecutive postseasons, a feat no one else has ever accomplished, 11 first-team All-NBA selections, 9 first-team All-Defensive selections, tied for the most ever. The Mamba's legacy does not require protection from these arguments. It simply requires people willing to read the record honestly and say what it actually says.